Hi, guys. Oh, my goodness gracious. This is it. The end. It's so wonderful. And we're going to start off with chapter 25. Now, when we left off, we had the beautiful, wonderful Cato crashing through the forest, screaming and just completely ignoring Peta and Katniss. Now, Katniss, I almost put, poor me. Now, so you know, there's a big deal here because the movie makers completely changed what was going on. Now, we now know what Cato got in that package he needed so desperately: body armor. He knew about Katniss. He knew he had to be able to get close to her. So he's got some sort of body armor because Katniss shoots him right in the chest and it bounces right off. So we're in trouble here, people. Here we go. Our first thing. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is where you're going to put your collage. Collages are 5 points. They're super easy. Just make sure you have everything that's real. Now, you might actually have to go take a look at some of the images of what really is chasing Cato, because what the movie makers made up is nothing like the real thing. Up next, 2. Symbol. Something that represents or stands for something else, especially a material object representing something else. The Hunger Games themselves are a symbol that represent the defeat of the districts at the time of the war. On the right side of this slide, write a brief description of each symbol it represents in the novel. Use one piece of textual evidence to support your answer. The Mockingjay, fire, a dandelion, cornucopia. Now, here we go, peeps. Let's start reading. Mutations. Of course, a play on the words from mutation. Mutations. No question about it. I've seen these mutts, but they were no natural born animals. They resemble huge wolves. But what wolf lands and then bounces easily on its hind legs? What wolf waves the rest of the pack forward with its front paw as though it had a wrist? These things I can see at a distance. Up close, I'm sure there are more menacing attributes to be revealed. Cato has made a beeline for the cornucopia. Without question, I follow him. If he thinks it's the safest place, who am I to argue? Besides, even if I could make it to the trees, it would be impossible for Peta to outrun them on that leg. Peta! My hands have just landed on the metal of the pointed tail of the cornucopia when I remember I'm part of a team. He's about 15 yards behind me, hobbling as fast as he can, but the mutts are closing in on him fast. I send an arrow into the pack and one goes down, but there are plenty to take its place. Peta waving me up the horn. Go, Katniss, go! He's right. I can't protect either of us on the ground. I start climbing, scaling the cornucopia with my hands and feet. The pure gold surface has been designed to resemble a woven horn that we filled at harvest. So there's little ridges and seams to get a decent hold on. But after a day in the arena sun, the metal feels hot enough to blister my hands. Cato lies on his side in the very top of the horn, 20 feet above the ground, gasping as he catches his breath as he gags over the edge. Now my chance to finish him off. I stop midway up the horn and load another arrow, but just as I'm about to let it fly, I hear Peta cry out. I twist around and see that he's just reached the tail, and the mutts are right on his heels. Climb! I yelled at Peta. Peta starts up, hampered by not only his leg, but the knife in his hand. I shoot my arrow down the throat of the first mutt that takes its paws. It places its paws on the metal. As it dies, the creature lashes out inadvertently, opening a gash on a few of its companions. That's when I get a look at the claws, 4 inches and clearly razor sharp. Peta reaches my feet, and I grab his arm and pull him along. Then I remember Cato waiting at the top of the whip around, but he's doubled over with cramps and apparently more preoccupied with the mutts than us. He coughs out something unintelligible. The snuffling, growling sound coming from the mutts isn't helping. What? I shouted at him. He said, "Can they climb it?" answers Peta, drawing my focus back to the base of the horn. The mutts are beginning to assemble. They join together. They raise up to stand easily on their back legs, giving them an eerily human quality. Each has a thick coat, some with fur as light as sleek and others curly. The colors vary from jet black to what I can only describe as blonde. There's something else about them, something that makes my hair raise up on the back of my neck, but I can't put my finger on it. They put their snouts to the horn, sniffing and tasting the metal, scraping paws over the surface, and then making high-pitched yipping sounds at one another. This must be how they communicate, because the pack backs up as if to make room. Then one of them, a good-sized mutt with silky waves of blonde fur, takes a running start and leaps onto the horn. With his back legs must have been incredibly powerful because it lands in a mere 10 feet below us, its pink lips pulled back in a snarl. For a moment it hangs there, and in a moment I realize what else unsettles me about these mutts. The green eyes glowing back at me unlike any dog or wolf, any canine I've ever seen. They're unmistakably human. Okay, I gotta pause right there. I got a kid in the Zoom. I'll be right back. Here we go. The green eyes glowering at me were unlike any dog or any wolf that a canine had ever seen. They were unmistakably human. And that's a revelation that barely registered when I noticed the collar with the number 1 inlaid in jewels. And the whole horrible thing hits me. The blonde hair, the green eyes, the number. It's Glimmer. A shriek escapes my lips, and I'm having trouble holding an arrow in place. I have been waiting to fire, only too aware of my dwindling supply of arrows, waiting to see if the creature can, in fact, climb. But now, even though the mutt has begun to slide backwards, unable to find any purchase on the metal, even though I can hear the slow screeching of claws like nails on the blackboard, the fire in its throat, its body twitches and flops into the ground with a thud. Katniss? I can feel Peeta's grip on my arm. It's her. I get out. My head snaps from side to side as I examine the pack, taking in the various sizes and colors. The small one with the red coat and amber eyes, fox-faced. And there's the ashen hair and hazel eyes of the boy from District 9, who died as we struggled for the backpack. And worst of all, the smallest mutt, with dark, glossy fur. Sorry, guys. Sorry. The worst of all, the smallest mutt, with dark, glossy fur, huge brown eyes, and the collar that reads 11 woven in straw, teeth bared in hatred. What is it, Katniss? Peeta shakes my shoulder. It's them. It's all of them, the others. Rue and Foxface and all the other tributes, I choke out. I hear Peeta gasp in recognition. What did they do to them? You don't think those could be their real eyes? Their eyes are the least of my worries. What about their brains? Have they been given any of the real tribute's memories? Have they been programmed to hate their faces particularly because we survived and they were so callously murdered? And the ones we actually killed, do they believe they're avenging their own deaths? Before I can get this out, the mutts begin a new assault on the horn. They split into 2 groups at the sides of the horn and are using those powerful hindquarters to launch themselves at us. A pair of teeth ringing together against just inches from my hand. And then I hear Peeta cry out, feel a yank from his body, and a heavy weight of the boy and the mutt pulling me over the side. If not for the grip of my arm, he'd have been on the ground. But as it is, it takes all my strength to keep us both in the curved back of the horn, and more tributes are coming. Kill it, Peeta, kill it! I'm shouting. And although I can't quite see what's happening, I know he must have stabbed the thing because the pull lessens. I'm able to haul him back up onto the horn where we drag ourselves towards the top where the lesser 2 evils waits. Cato has still not regained his feet, but his breathing is slowing, and I know soon he'll be recovered enough to come after us, to hurl us over the side to our deaths. I arm my bow, but the arrow ends up taking out the mutt that can only be Thresh. Who else could jump so high? I feel a moment of relief because he must finally be up above the mutt line, and I'm just turning back to face Cato when Peeta jerks from my side. I'm sure the pack has got him until his blood splatters my face. Sorry, guys, I got somebody with an email. So sorry, guys. Just a reminder, if you ever rate something accidentally, then definitely go file version history and then reset it back to the last version history that has what you want on it. Or hit Control Z in order to do a undo. Here we go. Sorry, my bad. Let us continue. Cato stands before me, almost at the lip of the horn, holding Peeta in some kind of headlock. Cutting off his air, Peeta's clawing at Cato's arm, but weakly, as if confused over whether it's more important to breathe or try to stem the gush of blood gaping hole from the mutt left in his calf. I aim one of my last 2 arrows at Cato's head, knowing it would have no effect on his trunk or limbs, which I can now see are clothed in a skin-tight flesh-colored mesh. Some high-grade body armor from the capital. Was that what his pack what was in his pack at the feast, body armor to defend against my arrows. Well, they neglected to send a face guard. Cato just laughs. Shoot me, and he goes down with me. He's right. If I take him out, he falls to the mutts. Peeta's sure to die with him. We reached a stalemate. I can't shoot Cato without killing Peeta, too. He can't kill Peeta without guaranteeing an arrow in his brain. We stand like statues, both of us seeking an out. My muscles are strained so tight that they feel that they might snap any moment. My teeth clenched to the breaking point. The mutts go silent, and the only thing I can hear is the blood pounding in my good ear. Peeta's lips are turning blue. If I don't do something quickly, he'll die of asphyxiation, and then I'll have lost him. And Cato will probably use his body as a weapon against me. In fact, I'm sure this is Cato's plan, because while he stopped laughing, his lips are set in a triumphant smile. As if the last-ditch effort, Peeta raises his fingers, dripping with blood from his leg, up to Cato's arm. Instead of trying to wrestle his way free, his forefinger veers off and makes a deliberate X on the back of Cato's hand. Cato realizes what it means exactly 1 second after I do. I can tell by the way his smile drops from his lips, but it's 1 second too late, because by that time, my arrow is piercing his hand. He cries out reflexively, releases Peeta, who slams back against him. For a horrible moment, I think they're both going over. I dive forward, just catching hold of Peeta as Cato loses his footing on the blood-slicked horn and plummets to the ground. We hear him hit, the air leaving his body on impact, and then the mutts attack him. Peeta and I hold on to each other, waiting for the cannon, waiting for the competition to finish, waiting for it to be released. But it doesn't happen, not yet, because this is the climax, the Hunger Games, and the audience expects a show. I don't watch, but I hear the snarls and the growls and the howls of pain from both human and beast as Cato takes on the mutt pack. I can't understand how he's surviving until I remember his body armor protecting him from ankle to neck, and I realize that how long night this could be. Cato must have a knife or a sword or something too, something that he's hidden in his clothes, because on occasion there's a death scream. On occasion there's a death scream from a mutt, or the sound of metal on metal as the blade collides with the golden horn. The combat moves around the side of the cornucopia, and I know Cato must be attempting the one maneuver that could save his life, to make his way back around the tail of the horn and rejoin us. But in the end, despite his remarkable strength and skill, he is simply overpowered. I don't know how long it's been, maybe an hour or so, when Cato hits the ground and we hear the mutts dragging him back to the cornucopia. Now they'll finish him off, I think, but there's still no cannon. Night falls and the anthem plays, and there's no picture of Cato in the sky, only faint moans coming through the metal beneath us. The icy air blowing across the plains reminds me that the games are not over and may not be for who knows how long, and there's still no guarantee of victory. I turn my attention to Peeta, who's discovered his leg is bleeding as badly as ever. All our supplies, our packs, remaining down by the lake, and we abandoned them when we fled from the mutts. I had no bandage, nothing to staunch the flow of blood from his calf, although I'm shaking in the biting wind, and I rip off my jacket, remove my shirt, zip back up the jacket as swiftly as possible. The brief exposure sets my teeth chattering beyond control. Peeta's face is gray and pale in the moonlight. I make him lie down before I probe his wound. Warm, slippery blood runs through my fingers. A bandage will not be enough. I've seen my mother try a tourniquet a handful of times to try to replicate it. I cut free a sleeve of my shirt, wrap it twice around his leg just under the knee, and tie a half knot. I don't have a stick, so I take the remaining arrow and insert it in the knot, twisting it as tightly as I dare. It's risky business. Peeta may end up losing his leg, but when I weigh this against losing his life, what alternative do I have? I bandage the wound in the rest of my shirt and lay down with him. Don't go to sleep, I tell him. I'm not sure if this is exactly medical protocol, but I'm terrified that if he drifts off, he's never going to wake again. Are you cold? He asks. He unzips his jacket and presses against him as he fastens it around me. It's a bit warmer, sharing our body heat inside the double layer of jackets, but the night is young and the temperature will continue to drop. Even now I can feel the cornucopia, which burned so when we first climbed it, slowly turning to ice. Can't even win this thing yet, I whispered to Peeta. Don't you believe it, he says, pulling at my hood, but he's shaking harder than I am. The next hour is the worst of my life, which, if you think about it, is saying something. The cold would be torture enough, but the real nightmare is listening to Cato moaning, begging, and finally just whimpering as the mutts work away at him. After a very short time, I don't care who he is or what he's done. All I want is his suffering to end. Why don't they just kill him? I ask Peeta. You know why, he says, and he pulls me closer to him. And I do. No viewer could turn away from the show now. From the game maker's point of view, this is the final word in entertainment. Okay, let's go take a look at our work on that, because I'm a little worried that we're not going to get it all done, and I'm just We got it. So let's go back over and we're going to go down to week 6. Isn't it wonderful, guys? Oh, pardon me. Open a new window. Let's go drop that puppy right there, shall we? Now, we've already talked about doing our collage, and then we're going to go down. Now, give a brief description of each symbol represents in the novel. Now, this is what it represents, not what it is. What does it represent? Now, we can easily do this in our PDF by hitting Control F, and it'll open up the find box, and we can put something in like dandelion or fire, whatever, and it's going to come up every single time it's used in the book. And this will help you find your evidence. But let's talk about this a little bit. The Mockingjay. The Mockingjay becomes a symbol becomes a symbol of that's really tied to Rue. Mockingjay, of course, is something that was supposed to do one thing and ends up doing another. It is a mutation that was created by the Capitol. It was supposed to spy on the rebels, but instead the rebels used it against the Capitol and ended up utilizing their weapon the Capitol's weapon to their own advantage. So the Mockingjay is a symbol of rebellion. It's a symbol of making do with the best making do with what you have. And for Katniss, it was given to her by Madge, not Prim. It was given to her by Madge. And for her, it was a big deal. This piece was a very big deal because it was from her mother's twin, who died in the Hunger Games. It was brought back to District 12, and it belonged to that tribute who died. And so for her, it had a great deal of significance. And her giving it to Katniss is telling her, you are worth this. You can do this. You are worth more. Fire. Fire is actually transformative in this. Fire is not a bad thing. Fire is passion, and it's defiance, and it's a transformation from one worthless thing to something even more valuable. Graphite with enough pressure and heat becomes diamonds. Of course, Effie makes a dork move and she thinks it makes it pearls, but we're just going to ignore that. Dandelion. Definitely take a look at the dandelion. Make sure you understand this for the final. The dandelion is renewal, rebirth, survival. The dandelion is the first plant that Katniss utilizes in order to save herself. And so it means survival. It means you can do it. And then the cornucopia. Now, normally, if you guys look up this word, please don't. It's going to be like wealth, and no. The cornucopia for the Hunger Games is a bloodbath. The cornucopia, it does give a lot of things, but it means death. That's the reason why they bring them back to the cornucopia for the end scene. The bloodbath in the beginning starts the cornucopia. The bloodbath at the end ends at the cornucopia. So it's really a place of death. Now let's move on to our next slide because we're awesome like that. Okay. Wrap-up questions. Think back to the beginning of the unit and the slides in the dystopian societies. Use the information from slides 5 and 6 to answer questions 1 for number 2 and should provide 2 pieces of evidence in your answer. So it means you have to find 2 quotes in the book, and I'm not going to give them to you guys. Why does the Capitol have the tradition of the Hunger Games? We know from chapter 1, hint, that these are to represent the rebellion against the Capitol. It is a punishment for the districts for ever rebelling against the Capitol, and it shows them that the Capitol can do whatever they want. What is its purpose? How does it reflect dystopian society? Its purpose is to reinstill fear in the districts every year. It also gives an economic boost to the Capitol and gives the Capitol citizens something to fixate on, be entertained by. How does this reflect dystopian society? It's losing your freedoms. It's being constantly under surveillance. It's not having any power politically. It's to instill that fear that dystopian societies use to keep people under control. 2, what the tributes all have many different skills for survival. Out of the tributes, which one is the most important skill? Why? You can pick whatever you want. Hunting, gathering. I know hunting is really big, but if you think about it, Katniss doesn't really kill a lot of people. But PETA has this skill of being really likable and charming, and that gets him pretty damn far. But then Rue has her plant knowledge, and that keeps her from poisoning herself. But then we've got Foxface, who's very, very cunning. She understands human behavior, and she gets pretty damn far with it. Now, 4. Predictions. Part of the connecting the novel is making a text-to-text connections, text to itself connections, and thinking about the characters after the story has come to a close. Answer the questions on the right side. Think carefully about each character and his or her motivations during the Hunger Games. In order for us to answer these, we do have to finish the book because lots of stuff happens in the end. Here we go. This goes on and eventually completely consumes my mind, blocking out the memories and the hopes of tomorrow, erasing everything but the present, which I begin to believe will never change. There will never be anything but cold fear and agonizing sounds of the boy dying in the horn. Peter begins to doze off now. Each time that he does, I find myself yelling his name louder and louder because if he goes and dies on me now, I know I'll go completely insane. He's fighting it, probably more for me than for him, and it's hard because unconsciousness would be its own form of escape. But the adrenaline pumping through my body would never allow me to follow him, so I can't let him go. I just can't. The only indication of passage of time lies in the heavens, the subtle shift of the moon. So PETA begins pointing it out to me, insisting I acknowledge its progress, and sometimes, for just a moment, I feel a flicker of hope before the agony of the night engulfs me again. Finally, I hear him whisper that the sun is rising, and I open my eyes and find the stars fading in the pale light of the dawn. I can see, too, how bloodless PETA's face has become, how little time he has left, and I know I have to get him back to the capital. Still no cannon was fired. I press my good ear against the horn, and I can make out Cato's voice. I think he's closer now, Katniss. Can you shoot him? If he's near the mouth, I may be able to make him out, but it would be an act of mercy at this point. The last arrow's in your tourniquet, I say. Make it count, says PETA, and he unzips his jacket, letting me loose. So I free the arrow, tying the tourniquet back as tightly as my frozen fingers can manage. I rub my hands together, trying to regain circulation. Then I crawl to the lip of the horn, hanging over the edge. I feel PETA's hands grip me for support. It takes a few moments to find Cato in the dim light, in the blood. When the raw hunk of meat that used to be my enemy makes a sound, and I know where his mouth is, and I can think the word he's trying to say is please. Pity, not vengeance, sends the arrow flying into his skull. PETA pulls him back, and the bow in hand quiver empty. Did you get him? He whispers. The cannon fires in answer. Then we won, Katniss, he says hollowly. Hooray for us! I get out, but there's no joy and victory in my voice. A hole opens in the plain, and as if on cue, the remaining mutts bound into it, disappearing as the earth closes above them. We wait for the hovercraft to take Cato's remains for the trumpets of victory that should follow, but nothing happens. Hey, I shout in the air, what's going on? The only response is the chatter of waking birds. Maybe it's the body? Maybe we have to move away from it? I try to remember, do we have to distance ourselves from the dead tribute and the final kill? My brain is too muddled to be sure, but what else could it be for the reason for the delay? Okay. Think you could make it to the lake, I ask? I think I better try, says PETA. We inch down to the tail of the horn and then fall to the ground. If the stiffness of my limbs was this bad, how can PETA even move? I raise first, swinging and bending my arms and legs until I can think I can help him up. Somehow we make it back to the lake. I scoop up a handful of cold water for PETA and bring it second to my lips. A mockingjay gives a song, a low whistle, and the tears of relief fill my eyes as the hovercraft appears and takes Cato's body away. Now they will take us. Now we can go home. But again, there's no response. What are they waiting for? Says PETA weakly. Between the loss of the tourniquet and the effort that took to get to the lake, his wound has opened up again. I don't know, I say. Whatever the holdup is, I can't watch him lose any more blood. I get up to find a stick, but almost immediately come across an arrow that bounced off Cato's body armor. It will do as well as another arrow. As I stood to pick it up, Claudius Templesmith's voice booms into the arena. Greetings to the final contestants of the 74th Annual Hunger Games. The earlier revision has been revoked. Closer examination of the rulebook has disclosed that the only one winner may be allowed. He says, good luck, and may the odds be ever in your favor. There was a small burst of static and then nothing more. I stare at PETA in disbelief as the truth sinks in. They never intended us to both live. This has all been devised by the game makers to guarantee the most dramatic showdown in history. And like a fool, I bought into it. If you think about it, it's not that surprising, he says softly. I watch as he painfully makes it to his feet. Then he's moving towards me as if in slow motion. His hand is pulling the knife from his belt. Before I'm even aware of my actions, my bow is loaded with the arrow pointed straight at his heart. Peter raises his eyebrows to see, and I see the knife has already left his hand on its way to the lake, where it splashes into the water. I drop my weapons and take a step back, my face burning at what can only be shame. No, do it. Peter limps towards me and thrusts the weapons back in my hands. I can't, I say. I won't. Don't do it. Before they send those mutts back or something, I don't want to die like Cato, he says. Then you shoot me, I say furiously, shoving the weapons back at him. You shoot me and you go home and live with it. And as I say it, I know the death right there, right now, would be easier of the two. You know I can't, Peter says, discarding the weapons. Fine, I go first anyway. He leans down and rips the bandage off of his leg, eliminating the final barrier between his blood and the earth. No, you can't kill yourself, I say. I'm on my knees, desperately plastering the bandage back to his wound. Katniss, this is what I want. You're not leaving me here alone, I say. Because if he dies, I'll never go home. Not really. I'll spend the rest of my life in this arena trying to think of a way out. Listen, he says, pulling me to my feet. We both know they have to have a victor. And only one of us. Please take it from me. And he goes on about how he loves me and what life would be like without me. But I've stopped listening because his previous words are trapped in my head and thrashing desperately around. We both know they have to have a victor. Yes, they have to have a victor. Without a victor, the whole thing blows up in the game makers' faces. They failed the Capitol, might possibly even be executed, slowly and painfully while the cameras broadcast it in every screen in the country. If Pete and I were both to die, or they thought we were, my fingers fumble in the pouch of my belt, freeing it. Peter sees it, and his hand clamps on my wrist. No, I won't let you. Trust me, I whisper. He holds my gaze for a long moment and then lets go. I loosen the top of the pouch and pour out a few spoonfuls of berries into his palm and then fill my own. On the count of 3, Peter leans down and kisses me once, very gently. The count of 3, he says. We stand, our backs pressed together, our empty hands locked tight. Hold them out. I want everyone to see, he says. I spread out my fingers, and the dark berries glisten in the sun, and I give Peter's hand one last squeeze as a signal and as a goodbye, and then we begin counting. 1. Maybe I'm wrong. 2. Maybe they don't care if we both die. 3. It's too late to change my mind. I lift my hand to my mouth, taking one last look at the world. The berries have just passed my lips when trumpets begin to blare. A frantic voice of Claudius Templesmith shouts, Stop, stop! Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to present the victors of the 74th Annual Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen and Peeta Mellark. I give you the tributes of District 12. Chapter 26. So it's very much not like the movie. This was a calculated thing for her. She was like, okay, here we go. I'm going to make you do what I want. And it's not this, horrible thing of love. No, it's literally she planned this. I spew the berries from my mouth, wiping my tongue with the end of my shirt to make sure no juice remains. Peeta pulls me to the lake, and we both flush our mouths with water and then collapse into each other's arms. You didn't swallow any? I asked him. He shakes his head. You? I guess we'd be dead by now if I did, I say. I can see his lips moving in reply, but I can't hear him over the roar of the crowd in the Capitol that they're playing live over the speakers. A hovercraft materializes overhead and 2 ladders drop, only there's no way I'm letting go of Peeta. I keep one arm around him as I help him, and we both each place a foot on the first rung of the ladder. The electric current freezes us in place, and this time I'm glad because I'm not really sure Peeta can hang on for a whole ride. And since my eyes are looking down, I can see that while our muscles are immobile, nothing is preventing the blood from draining out of Peeta's leg. Sure enough, the minute the door closes behind us and the current stops, he slumps into the floor unconscious. My fingers are still gripping the back of his jacket so tightly that when they take him away, the tears leaving me with a fistful of black fabric. Leaving me with a fistful of black fabric. Doctors in sterile white masked and gloved, already prepped to operate, go into action. Pete is so pale and still on a silver table, tubes and wires springing out of him every inch of the way, and for a moment I forget we're out of the games, and I see the doctors as just one more threat, one more pack of mutts designed to kill him. Petrified, I lunge for him, but I'm caught and thrust back into another room, and the glass door seals between us. I pound on the glass, screaming my head off. Everyone ignores me except for some Capitol attendant who appears behind me and offers me a beverage. That is so real. I mean, she thinks she's kind of lost it, low blood sugar, exhaustion, hysteria. She's got it. And this guy's like, you want a drink? No. She's like, what? I slumped down to the floor, my face against the door, staring uncomprehendingly at the crystal glass in my hand, icy cold, filled with orange juice, a straw with a frilly white collar. How wrong it looked in my bloody, filthy hand with its dirt-caked nails and scars. My mouth waters at the smell, but I place it carefully on the floor, not trusting anything so clean and pretty. Through the glass, I see the doctors working feverishly on Peta, their brows creased in concentration. I see the flow of liquids pumping through the tubes. Watch a wall of dials and lights that mean nothing to me. I'm not sure, but I think his heart stops twice. It's like being home again when they bring in the hopeless, mangled person from the mine explosion, or a woman in her third day of labor, or the famished child struggling against pneumonia. My mother and Prim, they wear that same look on their faces. Now is the time to run away into the woods, to hide in the trees until the patient is long gone, and in another part of the seam, and the hammers make the coffin. But I held there, both by the hovercraft walls and the same force that holds the loved ones to the dying. How often I've seen them ringed around our kitchen table and thought, why don't they leave? Why do they stay and watch? I startle when I catch someone staring at me from only a few inches away, and I realize it's my own reflection back in the glass. Wild eyes, hollowed cheeks, my hair entangled mat, rabid, feral, mad. No wonder everyone is keeping a safe distance from me. The next thing I know, we're landed back in the roof of the training center, and they're taking Peta, but leaving me behind the door. I start hurling myself against the glass, shrieking, and I think I just catch a glimpse of pink hair. It must be Effie. It has to be Effie coming to my rescue, and when the needle jabs me from behind. When I wake, I'm afraid to move too fast. The entire ceiling glows with a soft yellow light, allowing me to see that I'm in a room containing just my bed. No doors, no windows are visible. The air smells something sharp and antiseptic. My right arm has several tubes that extended into the wall behind me. I'm naked, but the bedclothes arc soothingly against my skin. I tentatively lift my left hand above my collar. Not only has it been scrubbed clean, the nails are filed to perfect ovals, and the scars from the burns are less prominent. I touch my cheek, my lips, the puckered scar below my elbow, and I'm just running my fingers through my silken hair when I freeze. Apprehensively, I ruffle the hair by my left ear. No, it wasn't an illusion. I can hear again. I try to sit up, but some sort of wide restraining band around my waist keeps me from raising more than a few inches. The physical confinement makes me panic, and I'm trying to pull myself up and wriggle my hips through the band when a portion of the wall slides open and steps the red-headed Avox girl carrying a tray. The sight of her calms me, and I stop trying to escape. I want to ask her a million questions, but I'm afraid any familiarity would cause her harm. Obviously, I'm being closely monitored. She sets the tray across my thighs and presses something that raises me into a sitting position. While she adjusts my pillows, I risk one question. I say it out loud as clearly as my rusty voice will allow, so nothing can be seem secretive. Did Peta make it? She gives a nod, and as she slips a spoon into my hand, I feel a pressure of friendship. I guess she did not wish me dead after all, and Peta has made it. Of course he did. With all their expensive equipment here, still, I hadn't been sure until now. As the Avox leaves, the door closes noiselessly after her, and I turn hungrily to my tray, a bowl of clear broth, a small serving of applesauce, and a glass of water. This is it? I think grouchily. Shouldn't my homecoming dinner be a little bit more spectacular? But I find it's an effort just to finish the spare meal before me. My stomach seems to have shrunk to the size of a chestnut, and I have to wonder how long I've been out because I have no trouble eating a fairly sizable breakfast that last morning in the arena. There's usually a lag of a few days between the end of the competition and the presentation of the victor, so they can put the starving, wounded mess of a person back together again. Somewhere, Senna and Portia will be creating our wardrobes for the public appearances. Hamish and Effie will be arranging the banquet for our sponsors, reviewing the questions for our final interviews. Back home, District 12 is probably in chaos as they try to organize a homecoming celebrations for Peta and me, given the last one was close to 30 years ago. Home. Prim and my mother, Gail. Even the thought of Prim's scruffy old cat makes me smile. Soon I'll be home. I want to get out of bed to see Peta and Cinna, to find out more about what's been going on. And why shouldn't I? I feel fine. But as I start to work out my band, I feel a cold liquid seeping into my vein from one of the tubes, and almost immediately I lose consciousness. This happens on and off for the indeterminate amount of time. My waking, eating, and then, though I resist the impulse to try to escape the bed, being knocked out again. I seem to be in a strange, continual twilight. Only a few things register. The red-headed Avox girl has not returned since the feeding. My scars are disappearing. And do I imagine it, or do I hear a man's voice yelling? Not in the capital accent, but in the rougher cadences of home. And I can't help having a vague, comforting feeling that someone is looking out for me. Then finally, the time arrives when I come to, and there's nothing plugged into my right arm. The restraint around my middle has been removed, and I am free to move about. I start to sit up, but am arrested by the sight of my hands. The skin's perfection, smooth and glowing. Not only are the scars from the arena gone, but those accumulated over the years of hunting have vanished without a trace. My forehead feels like satin, and when I try to find the burn on my calf, there's nothing. I slip my legs out of the bed, nervous about how they will bear my weight, and find them strong and steady. Lying at the foot of my bed is an outfit that makes me flinch. It's what all of us tributes wore to the arena. I stare at it as if it has teeth until I remember that, of course, this was what I will wear to greet my team. I dress in less than a minute, and fidgeting in front of the wall, there where I know there is a door, even if I can't see it. And suddenly it slides open. I step into the wide, deserted hall that appears to have no other doors on it, but it must. And behind one of them must be Peta. Now that I am conscious and moving, I'm growing more and more anxious about him. He must be all right, for the Avox girl wouldn't have said so. But I need to see him for myself. Peta, I call. Since there's no one to ask, I hear my name in response. But it's not his voice. It's the voice that provokes the first irritation and eagerness, Effie. I turn and see them all waiting in a big chamber at the end of the hall. Effie, Hamish, Cinna. My feet take off without hesitation. Maybe a victor should show more restraint, more superiority, especially when she knows this will be on tape. But I don't care. I run for them and surprise even myself when I launch into Hamish's arms first. Then he whispers in my ear, "Nice job, sweetheart." It doesn't sound sarcastic. Effie, somewhat teary, keeps patting my hair and talking about how she told everyone we were pearls. Cinna then just hugs me tight and doesn't say anything, and then I notice Portia is absent and get a bad feeling. Where's Portia? Is she with Peta? Is he all right, isn't he? I mean, he's alive, I blurt out. He's fine. Only they want to do the Your Reunion live on the air at the ceremony, says Hamish. Oh, that's all I say. The awful moment of thinking Peta's dead again passes. I guess I want to see that myself. Go on with Cinna. He has to get you ready, says Hamish. It's a relief to be alone with Cinna, to feel his protective arm around me, my shoulders as he guides me away from the cameras down a few passages to the elevator and then leads to the lobby in the training center. The hospital is then far underground, even beneath the gym where the tributes practice tying knots and throwing spears. The windows of the lobby are darkened, and a handful of guards stand duty. No one else is there to see us cross to the tribute elevator. Our footsteps echo in the emptiness, and when we ride up to the 12th floor, the faces of all the tributes who will never return flash across my mind, and there's a heavy, tight place in my chest. When the elevator door opens, Vinia, Fabulous, and Octavia engulf me, talking so quickly and ecstatically that I can't make out their words. The sentiment is clear, though. They are truly thrilled to see me, and I'm happy to see them too, although not like I was to see Cinna. It's more in the way that one might be glad to see the affectionate trio of pets at the end of a particularly difficult day. They sweep me into the dining room, and I get a real meal, roast beef and peas and soft rolls, although my portions are still being strictly controlled because when I ask for seconds, I'm refused. No, 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 they don't want it all coming back up on the stage, says Octavia. But she secretly slips me an extra roll under the table to let me know she's on my side. We go back to my room, and Cinna disappears for a while as the prep team gets me ready. Oh, they did a full body polish on you, says Fabulous. Not a flaw left in your skin. But when I look at my naked body in the mirror, all I can see is how skinny I am. I mean, I'm sure I was worse when I came out of the arena, but I can easily count my ribs. They take care of the shower settings for me, and they go to work on my hair, nails, and makeup when I'm done. They chatter so continuously that I barely have to reply, which is good since I don't feel very talkative. It's funny because even though they're rattling on about the games, it's all about where they were or what they were doing or how they felt when this specific event occurred. I was still in bed. I had just had my eyebrows dyed. I swear I nearly fainted. Everything was about them, not the dying boys and girls in the arena. We don't wallow around the games in this way in District 12. We grit our teeth, watch because we must, and try to get back to the business as soon as possible when it's over. To keep from hating the prep team, I effectively tune out most of what they're saying. Cinna comes in with what appears to be an unassuming yellow dress across his arms. Have you given up the whole girl on fire thing? I asked. You tell me, he says, and he slips it over my head. I immediately noticed the padding over my breasts, adding curves that the Hunger Games had stolen from my body. My hands go to my chest and I frown. I know, says Cinna before I can object, but the game makers wanted to alter you surgically. Haymitch had a huge fight with them over it. This was a compromise. He stops me before I look up at my reflection. Wait, don't forget the shoes. Vinia helps me into a pair of flat leather sandals, and I turn in the mirror. I'm still the girl on fire. The sheer fabric softly glows. Even the slightest movement in the air sends a ripple up my body. By comparison, the chariot costume seems garish, the interview dress too contrived. In this dress, I give the illusion of wearing candlelight. What do you think? Asks Cinna. I think it's the best yet, I say. When I manage to pull my eyes away from the flickering fabric, I'm in something of a shock. My hair's loose, held back by a simple hairband. The makeup rounds and fills out the sharp edges of my face. A clear polish coats my nails, and the sleeveless dress is gathered at my ribs, not my waist, largely eliminating any help the padding would have given my figure. The hem falls just to my knees without heels. You can see my true stature. I look very simply like a girl, a young one, 14 at the most, innocent, harmless. Yes, it's shocking that Cinna has pulled this off when you remember that I'm just won the games. Okay, so Cinna's really playing down the you are a murderer kind of thing because she's done something like defy the Capitol, and in defying the Capitol, she is a threat, and he's trying to make her look as least threatening as possible. But we also get the idea that the game makers are trying to sexualize her by they wanted her to have breast implants, and Hamish was like, hell no, and they ended up compromising by instead padding her out using foam padding to make her look more girly. This is a very calculated look. Nothing Cinna designs is arbitrary. I bite my lip trying to figure out his motivation. I thought something more sophisticated looking, I say. I thought PETA would like this better, he answers carefully. PETA. No, it's not PETA. It's about the Capitol and the game makers and the audience. Although I do not yet understand Cinna's design, it is a reminder that the games are not quite finished, and beneath his benign reply I sense a warning. It's something he can't even mention in front of his own team. We take the elevator to the level where we trained. It's customary for the victor and his or her support team to race from beneath the stage. First the prep team, followed by the escort and the stylist, the mentor, and finally the victor. Only this year with two victors who share both an escort and a mentor, the whole thing had to be rethought. I find myself in a poorly lit area under the stage. A brand new metal plate has been installed to transport me upward. You can still see the piles of sawdust, smell fresh paint. Cinna and the prep team peel off to change into their own costumes and take their positions, leaving me alone in the gloom. I see a makeshift wall about 10 yards away and assume PETA's behind it. The rumbling of the crowd is loud, so I don't notice Hamish until he touches my shoulder. I spring away, startled. Still half in the arena, I guess. Easy, just me. Let me look at you. Good enough. Hamish says as he holds his arms and I turn once. It's not much of a compliment, but what, I say. Hamish lifts, eyes shift around in a musty holding space, and he seems to make a decision. But nothing. But how about a hug for luck? Okay, that's not a request from Hamish, but after all, we're victors. Maybe a hug for luck is in order. Only when I put my arms around his neck, I find myself trapped in his embrace. He begins talking very fast, very quietly in my ear, and my hair concealing his lips. Listen up. You're in trouble. Word is that the Capitol's furious about you showing them up in the arena. The one thing that they can't stand is being laughed at. And they're the joke of Pan Am, says Hamish. I feel dread coursing through me now, but I laugh as though Hamish is saying something completely delightful because nothing is covering my mouth. So what? Your only defense can be you were so madly in love, you weren't responsible for your actions. Hamish pulls back and adjusts my hairband. Got it, sweetheart? We could be talking about anything now. Got it. Did you tell PETA this? Don't have to, says Hamish. He's already there. But you think I'm not, I say, taking the opportunity to straighten the bright red bow tie Cinna must have rustled him into. Since when does it matter what I think, says Hamish. Better take our places. He leads me to the metal circle. This is your night, sweetheart. Enjoy it. He kisses me on the forehead and disappears into the gloom. I tug on my skirt, willing it to be longer, wanting it to cover my knocking knees. Then I realize it's pointless. My whole body's shaking like a leaf. Hopefully it will be put down to excitement. After all, it's my night. The damp, moldy smell beneath the stage threatens to choke me, and a cold, clammy sweat breaks out into my skin. I can't rid myself of feeling that the boards above my head are about to collapse, to bury me alive under the rubble. When I left the arena, when trumpets played, I was supposed to be safe. From then on, for the rest of my life. But if what Hamish says is true, and he's got no reason to lie, I've never been in such a dangerous place in my life. It's so much worse than being hunted in the arena. There I could only die. End of story. But out here, Prim, my mother, Gail, the people of District 12, everyone I care about back home could be punished if I can't pull this girl driven crazy by love scenario Hamish has suggested. So I still have a chance, though. Funny, in the arena when I poured out those berries, I was only thinking about outsmarting the game makers, not how my actions would reflect on the Capitol. But the Hunger Games are the weapon that their weapon, and you are not supposed to be able to defeat it. So now the Capitol will act as if they have been in control the whole time, as if they orchestrated the whole event, right down to the double suicide. But that will only work if I play along with them, and PETA will suffer too. If this goes wrong, but what was it Hamish said when I asked if he had told Peter the situation, that that he had to pretend to be desperate in love? I don't have to. He's already there, already thinking ahead of me in the games again, well aware of the danger we're in, or already desperately in love. I don't know. I haven't even begun to separate my feelings about PETA. It's too complicated. What I did as part of the games, I as opposed to what I did out of anger at the Capitol, or because how I would be viewed back in District 12, or simply because it was the only decent thing to do, or what I did because I cared about him. These are questions to be unraveled back home in a peace and quiet of the woods, when no one is watching, not here when every eye is upon me. But I won't have the luxury for who knows how long, and right now the most dangerous part of the Hunger Games is about to begin. Chapter 27. The anthem booms in my ears when I hear Caesar Flickerman greeting the audience. Does he know how crucial it is to get every word right from now on? He must. He will want to help us. The crowd breaks into applause as the prep teams are presented. I imagine Flavolus, Vinny, and Octavia bouncing around and taking ridiculous bobbing bows. It is a safe bet that they're clueless. Then Effie is introduced. How long she's waited for this moment. I hope she's able to enjoy it because, as misguided as Effie can be, she has a very keen instinct about certain things, and I must at least suspect we're in trouble. Portia and Cinna receive huge cheers, of course. They've been brilliant and had a dazzling debut. I now understand Cinna's choice of dress for me for tonight. I'll need to look as girlish and innocent as possible. Hamish's appearance brings around a stomping that goes on for at least 5 minutes. Well, he's accomplished a first, keeping not only one but two tributes alive. What if he hadn't warned me in time? Would have I acted differently? Flaunted the moment with the berries in the Capitol's face? No, I don't think so. But I could easily have been a lot less convincing than I need to be right now, because I can feel the plate lifting me up on the stage. Blinding lights, the deafening roar and rattles of metal under my feet. Then there's PETA just a few yards away. He looks so clean and healthy and beautiful, I hardly recognize him. But his smile is the same whether in the mud or in the Capitol, and when I see it, I take out 3 steps and fling myself into his arms. He staggers back, almost losing his balance, and when I realize the slim metal contraption in his hand must be some kind of cane. He rights himself, and we just cling to each other while the audience goes insane. He's kissing me, and all the time I'm thinking, do you know how much danger we're in? After about 10 minutes of this, Caesar Flickerman taps his shoulder to continue to show, and PETA just pushes him aside without even glancing at him, and the audience goes berserk. Whether he knows it or not, PETA is, as usual, playing the crowd exactly right. Finally, Hamish interrupts us and gives us a good-natured shove toward the victor's chair. Usually this is a single ornate chair from which the winning tribute watches the film and the highlights of the games. But since there's 2 of us, the game makers have provided a plush red velvet couch. A small one my mother used to call a love seat, I think. I sit so close to PETA that I'm practically in his lap, but one look from Hamish tells me this isn't enough. Kicking off my sandals, I tuck my feet to the side and lean my head against PETA's shoulder. His arm goes around me automatically, and I feel like I'm back in the cave, curled up against him, trying to keep warm. His shirt is made of some of the same yellowy material as my dress, but Portia's put him in long black pants, no sandals either, but a pair of sturdy black boots he keeps solidly planted on the stage. I wish Cinna had given me a similar outfit. I feel so vulnerable in this flimsy dress, but I guess that was the point. And it's really funny that now she wants to be dressed like PETA when in the beginning she hated it so much. Caesar Flickerman makes a few more jokes, and then it's time for the show. This is the last exactly 3 hours as required viewing for all of Pen Am. As the lights dim and the seal appears on the screen, I realize I am unprepared for this. I do not want to watch my 22 fellow tributes die. I saw enough of them die the first time. My heart starts pounding and I have a strong impulse to run. How have the other victors faced this alone? During the highlights, they particularly show the winner's reaction up in the box in the corner of the screen. I think back to the earlier years. Some are triumphant, pumping their fists in the air, beating their chests. Most just seem stunned. All I know is that the only thing keeping me from in this love seat is PETA. His arm around my shoulders, his other hand claimed both of mine. Of course, the previous victors didn't have the Capitol looking for a way to destroy them. Condensing several weeks into 3 hours is quite a feat, especially when you consider how many cameras are going at once. Whoever puts together the highlights has to choose from what sort of story to tell. This year, for the first time, they tell a love story. I know PETA and I won, but the disproportionate amount of time is spent on us right from the beginning. I'm glad, though, because it supports the whole crazy in love thing that is my defense for defying the Capitol. Plus, it means we won't have as much time to linger over the deaths. The first half hour is so focused on the pre arena events, the reaping, the chariot ride through the Capitol, our training scores. Sorry, guys. And other interviews. There's some sort of upbeat soundtrack playing under it that makes it twice as awful because, of course, almost everyone on screen is dead. Once we're in the arena, the detailed coverage of the bloodbath and the filmmakers basically alternate between shots of tributes dying and shots of us. Mostly PETA, really. There's no question he's carrying the romance thing on his shoulders. Now I see what the audience saw, how he misled the careers about me, staying awake the entire night under the tracker-dragger tree, fought Cato to let me escape, and even while he lay in the mud bank, whispered my name in his sleep. I seem heartless in comparison, dodging fireballs, dropping nests, and blowing up supplies, till I go hunting for Rue. They play her death in full. The spearing, my failed rescue attempt, my arrow through the boy from the District 1's throat, Rue drawing her last breath in my arms, and the song. I get to sing every note of the song. Something inside me shuts down, and I'm too numb to feel anything. It's like watching a complete strangers in another Hunger Games. But I do notice they omit the part where I covered her in flowers. Right. Because even that smacks of rebellion. Things pick up once they've announced the two tributes from the same district can live. I shout out PETA's name and then clap my hands over my mouth. If I've seemed indifferent to him earlier, I make up for it now by finding him, nursing him back to health, going to the feast for medicine, and being very free with my kisses. Objectively, I can see the Mutts and Cato's death as gruesome as ever. But again, I feel it happens to people I've never met. And then comes the moment with the berries. I can hear the audience hushing one another, not wanting to miss anything. A wave of gratitude to the filmmaker sweeps over me when they end it, not with the announcement of our victory, but with me pounding on the glass door of the hovercraft, screaming PETA's name as they try to revive him. In terms of survival, my best moments, it's my best moment all night. The anthem playing yet again, and we raise the President Snow himself takes the stage, followed by a little girl carrying a cushion that holds the crown. There's just one crown, though, and you can hear the crowd's confusion. Whose head will he place it on? Until President Snow gives it a twist and it separates into two halves. He places the first around PETA's brow with a smile. He's still smiling when he settles the second on my head, but his eyes, just inches from mine, are unforgiving as a snake's. And when I know that even though both of us would have eaten the berries, I am to blame for having the idea. I'm the instigator. I'm the one to be punished. Much bowing and cheering follows. My arm is about to fall off from waving when Caesar Flickerman finally bids the audience good night, reminding them to tune in tomorrow for our final interviews, as if they had a choice. PETA and I are whisked to the president's mansion for the victory banquet, where we have very little time to eat, as Capitol officials and particularly generous sponsors elbow one another out of the way as they try to get their picture with us. Face after beaming face flashes by, becoming increasingly intoxicated as the evening wears on. Occasionally, I catch a glimpse of Haymitch, which is reassuring, or President Snow, which is terrifying. But I keep laughing and thanking people and smiling as my picture is taken. The one thing I never do is let go of PETA's hand. The sun is just peeking over the horizon when we stagger back to the 12th floor of the training center. I think now I finally get a word alone with PETA, but Haymitch sends him off with Portia to get something fitted for the interview, and personally escorts me to my door. Why can't I talk to him? I ask. Plenty of time to talk when you get home, says Hamish. Go to bed. You're on air at 2. Despite Hamish's running interference, I'm determined to see Peeta privately. After I toss and turn for a few hours, I slip into the hall. My first thought is to check the roof, but it's empty. Even the city streets far below are deserted after the celebration last night. I go back to bed for a while and then decide to go directly to his room. But when I try to turn the knob, I find my own bedroom door has been locked from the outside. I suspect Hamish initially, but then there's more insidious fear that the Capitol may be monitoring and confining me. I've been unable to escape since the Hunger Games began, but it feels different, much more personal. This feels like I've been imprisoned for a crime, and I'm waiting for sentencing. I quickly get back to bed and pretend to sleep until Effie Trinket comes to alert me that there's the start of another big, big day. I have about 5 minutes to eat a bowl of hot grain and stew before the prep team descends. All I have to say is the crowd loved you, and it's unnecessary to speak for the next couple of hours. When Cinna comes in, he shoos them out and dresses me in a white gauzy dress with pink shoes. When he personally adjusts my makeup until I seem to radiate a soft rosy glow. We make idle chit chat, but I'm afraid to ask him anything of real importance because there's an incident with the door. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched continuously. The interview takes place right down the hall in the sitting room. A space has been cleared and the love seat has been moved in and surrounded by vases of pink and red roses. There's only a handful of cameras to record the event. No live audience, at least. Okay, I'm going to pause right there while I go see a kid. Caesar Flickerman gives me a warm hug, and as I come in. Congratulations, Katniss. How are you faring? Fine. Nervous about the interview, I say. Don't be. We're going to have a fabulous time, he says, giving my cheek a reassuring pat. I'm not good at talking about myself, I say. Nothing you say will be wrong, he says. And I think, oh, Caesar, if only that were true. But actually, President Snow may be arranging some sort of accident for me as we speak. When Peeta is there, looking handsome in red and white, pulling me off to the side, I hardly get to see you. Hamish seems to be bent on keeping us apart. Hamish is actually bent on keeping us alive, but there are so many ears listening. I have to say, yes, he's gotten very responsible lately. Well, there's just this, and we go home. Then you can't watch us all the time, says Peeta. I feel sort of a shiver run through me, and there's no time to analyze why, because they're ready for us. We sit somewhat formally on the love seat, but Caesar says, oh, go ahead and curl up next to him if you want. You look very sweet. So I tuck my feet up, and Peeta pulls me close to him. Someone counts backward, and we're just like that. We're being broadcast live into the entire country. Caesar Flickerman is wonderful, teasing, joking, getting choked up when the occasion presents itself. He and Peeta already have that rapport they established the night of the first interview, and it's easy banter. So I just smile a lot and try to speak as little as possible. I mean, I have to talk some, but as soon as I can, I redirect the conversation back to Peeta. Eventually, though, Caesar begins to pose questions that insist Fuller answers. Well, Peeta, we know from our days in the cave that it was love at first sight for you. From what age? 5? Caesar says. From the moment I first laid eyes on her, says Peeta. But Katniss, what a ride for you. I think the real excitement for the audience was watching you fall for him. When did you realize you were in love with him? Said Caesar. Oh, that's a hard one. I gave a faint, breathy laugh, and then I looked down at my hands. Help. Well, I know when it hit me, the night when you shouted out his name in that tree, says Caesar. Thank you, Caesar, I think. And then I go with his idea. Yes, I guess that was it. I mean, until that point, I just tried not to think about what my feelings might be. Honestly, because it was so confusing. And it only made things worse if I actually cared about him. But then in the tree, everything changed, I say. Why do you think that was? Urges Caesar. Maybe because for the first time, there was a chance I could keep him, I say. Behind the cameraman, I see Hamish give a sort of huff with relief, and I know I've said the right thing. Caesar pulls out a handkerchief and has to take a moment because he's so moved. I can feel Peeta press his forehead to my temple, and he asks, so now you've got me, what are you going to do with me? I turn to him, put you somewhere you can never get hurt. And then he kisses me. People in the room actually sigh. For Caesar, it's a natural place to segue into all the ways we did get hurt in the arena, from burns to stings to wounds. But it's not until we get around to the mutts that I forget I'm on camera. When Caesar asks Peeta how his new leg is working out. New leg, I say, and I can't help reaching out and pulling up the bottom of Peeta's pants. Oh no! I whisper, taking in the metal and plastic device that has replaced his flesh. No one told you? He asks very gently, and I shake my head. I haven't had the chance, says Peeta, with a slight shrug. It's my fault, I say, because I used the tourniquet. Yes, it's your fault I'm alive, says Peeta. He's right, says Caesar. He'd have bled to death, sure, without it. I guess this is true, but I can't help feeling upset about it to the extent that I'm afraid that I might cry. And then I remember everyone in the country is watching me, so I just bury my face in Peter's shirt. It takes a couple of minutes to coax me back out because it's better in the shirt, where no one can see me, and when I do come out, Caesar backs off questioning me so that I can recover. In fact, he pretty much leaves me alone until the berries come up. Katniss, I know you've had a shock, but I've got to ask. The moment when you pulled out those berries, what was going on in your mind, he says. I take a long pause before I answer, trying to collect my thoughts. This is a crucial moment where I'm either going to challenge the Capitol or went crazy at the idea of losing PETA, and I can't be held responsible for my actions. It seems to call for a big dramatic speech, but all I can get out is the almost inaudible sentences. I don't know. I couldn't bear the thought of being without him. PETA, anything to add? No, I think that goes for both of us, he says. Caesar signs off and it's over. Everyone's laughing and crying and hugging, but I'm still not sure until I reach for Haymitch. Okay, I whisper. Perfect, he answers. I go back to my room and collect a few things and find that there's nothing to take but the Mockingjay pin Madge gave to me. Someone to return it to my room after the games. They drive us through the streets in a car with blackened windows, and the train is waiting for us. We barely have time to say goodbye to Cinna and Portia, although we'll see them in a few months when we tour the districts for a round of victory ceremonies. It's the Capitol's way of reminding people that the Hunger Games never really go away. We'll be given a lot of useless plaques, and everyone will have to pretend they love us. The train begins moving, and we're plunged into the night until we clear the tunnel. And I take my first free breath since the reaping. Effie is accompanying us back, and Hamish too, of course. We eat an enormous dinner and settle into silence in front of the television and watch the replay of the interview. With the Capitol growing further and further away every second, I begin to think of home, of Prim and my mother, of Gale. I excuse myself to change out of my dress and into a plain shirt and pants. As I thoroughly wash the makeup from my face and put my hair in its braid, I begin transforming myself back into myself, Katniss Everdeen, a girl who lives on the seam, hunts in the woods, trades at the hob. I stare into the mirror as I try to remember who I am and who I am not. By the time I join the others, the pressure of Peeta's arm around my shoulders feels alien. When the train makes a brief stop for fuel, we're allowed to go outside for some fresh air. There's no longer any need to guard us. Pete and I walk down along the track hand in hand, and I can't find anything to say now that we're done. He stops to gather a bunch of wildflowers for me, and when he presents them, I work hard to look pleased because he can't know that the pink and white flowers are the tops of wild onions, and they only remind me of the hours I've spent gathering them with Gale. Gale. The idea of seeing Gale in a matter of hours makes my stomach churn. But why? I can't quite frame it in my mind. I only know that I feel like I've been lying to someone who trusts me. Or more accurately, to two people. I've been getting away with it up to this point because of the games. But there are no games to hide behind back home. What's wrong? Peeta asks. Nothing, I answer. We continue walking past the end of the train, but train out where even I am fairly sure there are no cameras hidden in the scrubby bushes along the track. Still no words come. Haymitch startles me when he lays his hand on my back. Even now in the middle of nowhere, he keeps his voice down. Great job, you two. Just keep it up in the district until the cameras are gone. We should be okay. I watched him head back to the train, avoiding Peeta's eyes. What's he mean? Peeta asks me. It's the Capitol. They don't like our stunt with the berries, I blurted out. What are you talking about? He says. It seemed too rebellious, so Hamish has been coaching me through the last days, so I don't make it worse, I say. Coaching you? But not me, says Peeta. He knew you were smart enough to get it right, I say. I don't know what there's anything to get right, says Peeta. So what you're saying is these last few days when I guess back in the arena that it was all just some strategy you two worked out? No, I mean I couldn't even talk to him in the arena, could I stammer. But you knew he wanted you to do. Don't you, says Peeta, and I bite my lip. Katniss? He drops my hand and I take a step as if to catch my balance. It was all for the games, Peeta says. How you acted. Not all of it, I say tightly, holding on to my flowers. Then how much? No, forget that. I guess the real question is, what's going to be left when we get home? He says. I don't know. The closer we get to District 12, the more confused I get, I say. He waits for further explanation, but none is forthcoming. Well, let me know when you work it out, he says, and the pain in his voice is palpable. I know my ears are healed because even with the rumble of the engine, I can hear every step he takes back to the train. By the time I've climbed aboard, Pete has disappeared into his room for the night. I don't see him in the next morning either. In fact, the next time he turns up, we're pulling into District 12. He gives me a nod and his face is expressionless. I want to tell him that he's not being fair, that we were strangers, that I didn't what I had it took to stay alive, to keep us both alive in the arena, that I can't explain how things are with Gail because I don't know myself. That is no good loving me because I'm never going to get married anyway, and he'd just end up hating me later instead of sooner. That if I do have feelings for him, it doesn't matter because I'll never be able to afford that kind of love that leads to a family, to children. And how can he? How can he after what we've just been through? I also want to tell him how much I already miss him, but that wouldn't be fair on my part. So we just stand there silently watching our grimy little station rise up around us. Through the window, I see the platform thick with cameras. Everyone will be eagerly watching our homecoming. Out of the corner of my eye, I see Peeta extend his hand. I look at him, unsure. One more time? For the audience, he says. His voice isn't angry, it's hollow, which is worse. Already the boy with the bread is slipping away from me. I take his hand, holding it tightly, preparing for the cameras, and dreading the moment when I will finally have to let it go. And that's it. That's the end of book one, and we're finished. Let's go take a look at that last slide, shall we? Okay. Why do Katniss and Haymitch keep Peeta from knowing the truth about how angry the Capitol is at them? What does this tell you about each of the characters? Katniss doesn't even have a chance, but it's all orchestrated by Haymitch. Haymitch wants to keep Peeta in the dark because Peeta is in love with Katniss. He makes all the right decisions because he really does love her that much. He would have killed himself rather than be without her. He really feels that way. She might not. So since Katniss doesn't feel the real feelings, the deep feelings, then she's going to screw up. And since her plan was created to make the Capitol do what she wanted, not because she loved Peeta, then she has to be coaxed and she has to be led into the, you love him so much, and this is, you're just a stupid little girl who just couldn't live without your boy, and that's all a lie. So she has to be coached because she doesn't have that kind of feeling for Peeta. And she says it. She might never have that feeling for anyone. That she is so damaged by what they just went through, she may never feel that way about anyone ever. On top of that, she has all the trust issues from mom abandoning her, that she doesn't trust Peeta just to love her because people who love you leave you. So it's really weird, but it tells us a lot about Haymitch because Haymitch, he knows how to play the game. He won it the first time because he was smart. He's won it this time because he's smart. So we know that Haymitch is cunning. He's ruthless. He'll do whatever is necessary to keep them alive. And that even though he does not ever say it in the book, he does care about Katniss deeply. That he will do anything to save her. Katniss is clueless. Katniss still got a ton of issues and baggage she's never worked through. And she has to be told how to love people. And if not, she would have said something silly or dumb and ended up causing them to be killed by the Capitol. Like she says, the Capitol might actually cause an accident to happen to them. And then Peeta's just a genuine, loving, honest person. And he actually was at the point where he was willing to kill himself to save Katniss. And then he was willing to kill himself to be with Katniss in heaven. So in all honesty, he really feels that way, so he doesn't have to be coached. 2, what do you think will happen to Katniss, Peeta, and Gale and Haymitch now that the Hunger Games is over? Please do not quote the plot of the next book, okay? Because there's no way to actually see that in this book. Using only this book, not the movie, the book, what do you think is going to happen? Now, that's an opinion question. You can't be wrong as long as you justify your answer. Tell me why you think that's going to happen. The next 2 things are just, thank you, you're so wonderful. You guys turn this in as fast as you can. I adore you. Be good.